first make the list of those who are present. Let's begin with this one. I hope it is not too horrible to sit in front of the sun and to enjoy the sun and not seeing anything else. After all, and feeling and having a complete satisfaction with the coming spring and enjoyment. And I don't know how this mixture of spring and business and English will mix in your head and what will be the final result of that all. So we shall see how it goes. So little by little we were preparing the videos for you, and the university video, that is that camera, will have no words, no phrases, just me. That's it. So the camera is static. While another camera, this one, will prepare videos that are supplied with words and so on and so forth. Therefore, you will have an opportunity to have a quick overview of what we've been doing here in the class, and therefore you can make copies of those words and probably start using them. Today I'm going to speak to you about more practical things, not just the general stuff about how to understand business, although this we're going to speak about as well. But the most important thing is to understand how to make it all practice, how to make it all your individual practices, so that you would be capable of using words and phrases and constructions that we're discussing here in the class, and actually so that they become later on part of your vocabulary, so something that you can use in your everyday activity when it comes to business. I would like to begin by explaining to you the methodology of business English acquisition, so that this methodology becomes not only the general explanation of what we are doing here in this class, but largely the methodology that you can also use when you graduate from the university and start working in business, in all sorts of businesses. There are actually two approaches. The first approach that is normally used by non-specialists, and these are historians, philologists, sociologists, some people who actually for one reason or the other decided to change their profession and start working in business. There are plenty of people like that. They graduated from they're majoring in all sorts of human specialities like history and making studies of the history of monarchies and so on and so forth. But finally, eventually they find themselves working in this or that business company, working in the public relations department, investor relations department, working as human relations specialists and so on and so forth. As a result, they need to acquire this language already on the job. May I ask you once again, how many of you are actually specialists in business and economics? Raise up your hands. Who are going to work in this area? Not so many, actually. So the rest are those people who are not in business, in all sorts of arts, yes, like history and biology and botany. No? All right. But another approach that is being used for the acquisition of the language is something that is normally used broadly in the world by specialists, like students of economics and audit and statistics, who are acquiring the language for their immediate professional purposes. So the first one is called LSP method, language for specific purposes. Language for specific purposes. What is language for specific purposes? Language for specific purposes is a variety and kind of English that is used in this or that professional area. Normally, for example, when this or that person who graduates from the faculty of language, from the faculty of linguistics, or from the faculty of history wants to work as a translator, he or she is usually scared to face the text that he or she does not understand. and needs to do a lot of work actually to find the definitions and the explanations of words that are being used there. He has no idea about price and cost and value and income statement and balance sheet and cash flow statement and all sorts of ratios. No idea whatsoever. I remember I was myself like that in the very beginning, but I just wanted to work I wanted to work in that area. Therefore, I decided to do the following thing. I first thought that I need to make a thorough study of the special terminology that is being used by different areas of economics and business. And I put all these multiple cards on my table and started researching them. You read a text, you come across a word, a term, a statement, a phrase, and as you read, you can't make head or tail of that. It actually doesn't form any idea in your head because you do not have any background knowledge for that. So the question is there any approach, any way for you to start understanding this sort of stuff? The first instrument that I think is very, very important and something that you can all use every day is something that I call exposure. Do you understand the word exposure? What is exposure for you? Gлагол whereas there is a verb to expose to something, to be exposed to something, and exposure. Exposure, usually the word exposure is used in reference to risk. When you are exposed to this or that risk. But exposure in general means the condition of being involved into some kind of activity. Therefore, I don't know how and where you can find the opportunity for yourselves to be exposed to all types of business activity. This is rather difficult, but you can find friends who from time to time may need your services as a translator, or maybe working as a consultant, working as an editor for this or that document. This is entirely your work. You need to be exposed to the current flow of business English, because this language is changing very often and very quickly. Therefore, if you are not exposed to the current to the current state and condition of the English language that is used in business and economics, there will be a huge gap between what you are learning from me here and the sort of language that you might be confronted with, let's say, 2 or 3 years later when you graduate. You'll be learning certain words, certain phrases, certain terminology here in this class. Then you graduate, and then you go to work somewhere, and you suddenly discover that the language you have learned is already a bit old-fashioned, and people no longer speak this variety of English. New approaches are being used, new methodologies are being used. So this condition of this state of being exposed is very, very important. Well, when I was a student myself, I normally just told all my friends that I'm a translator in economics, and they were recommending me to their friends. And so I remember my very, very first experience in translating was the translation of a seminar for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was a simultaneous translation. And PricewaterhouseCoopers was teaching specialists in electricity and energy here in Russia how to set up energy companies. But I was just a fifth-year student of philology. And honestly, I don't believe that those people who are listening to my translation could actually understand anything. But this was the time when people had still very faint idea about how to develop business, how to start a company, what are the processes that are going on in companies. This was just the beginning of the process. Therefore, I was pardoned, meaning nobody could understand anything, but they thought that they couldn't understand simply because this was the material was new to them. But that was, on my part, that was a strong, strong desire to be exposed to the language that is being used. I just wanted to listen to it, to understand it, just to get the knowledge of that stuff. And my second exposure was that I started jobbing. What is to job? To job means to try and find freelancing, as modern word is being used. So I started jobbing or freelancing. And my first activity of freelancing was working for the English magazine or newspaper, as they call it, The Economist. Do you know this? So actually, they call themselves a newspaper. I don't know why. It looks like a magazine, but in fact, they call themselves a newspaper because they publish news and comment on the news. And that was really a fantastic experience. Meaning, on the very first day, I realized that I do not know 1/3 of what I should know, but I was giving a lot of time, actually, to concentrate on articles, helping the correspondent to make the research work, finding additional material, translating this additional material, making glossaries of all sorts. I was a postgraduate student in the university and simultaneously the assistant to the head of the Economist office here in Moscow. I was going to all sorts of interviews, translating, providing commentary, and so on and so forth. So that was my effort at the exposure. And I recommend you at this stage, well, now you are the first-year students or second-year students, maybe already senior students, to find and use every opportunity that you have to be exposed to the situation that I would call business communication. I don't know. Just ask your friends, tell everyone that you are a specialist. You can work as consultants, you can work as translators, you can work as writers, you can work as presentation developers. Just be exposed to this sort of language so that you would be in the current, you will be in the stream of the living business language that is being spoken today in English. And even though when you probably yet unfamiliar with many English words, how they are used in business, don't be scared. Start working, and you will have a lot of material at your disposal. Google and dictionaries and YouTube materials, huge. For example, even I'm sure that if I gave you the task, for example, to prepare this lecture and lecture instead of me here in this class, you might spend, I don't know, 3 or 4 days in YouTube listening to Harvard University's Business School, to London School of Economics, to Stanford University on YouTube, listening, making notes, compiling a presentation, and so on and so forth. With that material, that is lavishly actually on your shoulders and on your head, I'm sure you would be able to cope with that information and with that task quite successfully. When we were students at our time, we had no internet. Can you imagine not having internet and translating and writing for business? And we were using only paper dictionaries. And sometimes we didn't have, for example, if we failed to find a term or two, but we had to translate, for example, an article on the subject. What did you do? I was collecting myself and going to the library and spend the whole day in the library only to find 1 or 2 terms, and then return home and continue translating. Would you imagine yourselves doing like that? You'll be translating a certain article and so on and so forth. You fail to find a term or a phrase, or you misunderstand a certain concept. Then you say, well, I'm sorry, I can't find it. Then you go to the library and spend the whole day trying to find this term or two. This is just inconceivable for modern mind. Therefore, you do not understand how happy you are having all that material at your disposal and using it very efficiently. Therefore, don't be lazy. Find every possible opportunity to be exposed to the living human language of business. If you don't know how, come up to me after the lecture. I will give you some hints and ideas about how this could be done. So, as a linguist, as a historian, as a student of arts, when you are reading an article or a book or a fragment of a book on business, I was using, as I said to you, the LSP method. And the LSP method consisted in actually creating so many clippings. What's a clipping? Clipping is, well, I was cutting out bits and pieces from the text, and then I was making a research on these clippings. So I put all these clippings on my table. It looks approximately like that, as it is there on the blackboard. So all sorts of words. And then I started making a research. The research looks approximately like this. I came across the word governance, for example. What would I learn if I just look at the word governance? Well, I read governance, noun. The first meaning is government, exercise of authority, control. And the second meaning is a method or system of government or management. Do you think it gives you substantial enough information about the word governance so that you could profitably use it? Well, I was dissatisfied, for example, when I came across. I was dissatisfied because you have no examples, you have no profound and deep understanding of that, and the next step in LSP, in language for specific purposes, you take another dictionary and you read the definition in the second dictionary. Okay, the second dictionary tells you, so there is a simple definition and there is a full definition. A simple definition is the way that a city, company, etc. is controlled by the people who run it. And the second meaning, that is full definition, says that it is government. Think of this definition. That is the first one. Does it really? Can you read? Is it? No. So the first definition says the way that a city, company, etc. is controlled by the people who run it. Are you happy with this definition? So they say, what is governance? Governance is the way to control city or governance. They say, okay, do you understand it? Do you? Do you? I don't, really. When you come across. So you continue to be dissatisfied when you read the definition. And when I ask you, for example, what is governance? You say, well, that's very simple. And you start using this language. Governance is the way to control and manage a city or a company. Wonderful. By the way, in terms of using the language, this method, when you add to the word itself the memory of the way the word was actually defined in the dictionary, is very, very good for your speaking habits. Thus, for example, when you forget something, some special term, in that case, you may at least remember how the word was defined in the dictionary. You can easily continue communication. When I was an art student, I used this method all the time. For example, I worked also as a translator for the oil rig. What is an oil rig? Oil rig in the oil field. I was working in the oil field in Kazakhstan, in Tengiz. Also working as a translator for the oil company, Tengiz Chevroil. All right. That was absolutely insane on my part, because I didn't know a single oil term when I actually went there. Absolutely insane, mad. What did I do? I used this method. I said, I don't know what the name for that particular term is, but I may always ask the specialist there, and they can explain to me the meaning of that, or the functionality of this or that item, or detail, or a functional element. And they gave me the explanation, and after giving me the explanation, I was translating to the Russian staff their explanation. I didn't know the term, and they said, now that's clear. For example, well, I would be doing this all the time, by the way, at the initial stage. And where to gain this skill? You gain this skill by doing this sort of exercise of memorizing the definitions for special terms again and again, and you make a point of using words and definitions together again and again. Let me give you a simple example. For example, do you know the word mesmerize? Mesmerize. Is the verb familiar to you? No? All right. It's good that you don't know it. It will give me an excellent opportunity to play with that. So, all right, mesmerize. And now when I open the dictionary, I read to fascinate and hypnotize. To mesmerize means to fascinate and hypnotize. All right. What do I have in mind? I say mesmerize probably means not just fascinate or hypnotize, but means fascinate and hypnotize at the same time. Would you have any Russian idea of the Russian word that it what it could possibly mean. Hmm? Yes, something of the sort, right. But now I have already 3 words in my mind. When I was studying just one word, mesmerize, I was simultaneously studying the word fascinate and hypnotize. And then my next step in this word acquisition would be creating a context where all these 3 words will be used together in one context. And see how it will sound. Yesterday we had a visitor. He came from one of the leading European universities, and he's going to give us a lecture on the theory of literature. Professor John. He was a wonderful orator. He speaks beautifully. The whole audience was absolutely fascinated by his speech, was absolutely hypnotized by his manner of speaking, mesmerized by his appeal and his ability to speak to a lot of people. So what did I do? I'm just exercising the ability to use 3 words that I found in the dictionary and in the definition simultaneously. As a result, you create an atmosphere where people think that you express yourself beautifully. Not just 1 word, but 2 words, 3 words, 4 words simultaneously, as many words as possible that you find in the dictionary. Well, the next step in the word acquisition within the framework of LSP studies is studying the examples and providing the definitions for these examples relying on the definition from the dictionary. Can you see it now? Right? So example. All right, let me read to you the example for the word governance. They have very different approaches to the governance of the city. So that's the first example. They have very different approaches to the governance of the city. What information do I gain from this? Approaches to governance of the city. And then my next step in exercising this word and using this word would be trying to explain it with these words that I found in the dictionary. So they have very different approaches to the way to manage and to rule and to govern the city. That's what I'm doing. So I'm not just saying governance. I'm actually using the words that I found in the definition, in the dictionary. I'm using them here, practicing. As a result, you have a slightly better idea of how the word could be used. Well, this is then you will not be quite satisfied with just 2 examples. You want to have a broader vision, and then you start opening other definitions, you're studying other examples, seeing what else can be done with the word governance, and you find, for example, that there are certain expressions here that could be used with the word governance. So there's a governance, e-governance, good governance, clinical governance, corporate governance. You just get the knowledge of that. But this will not give you any opportunity actually to use it. You just understand this is the way to rule something, and probably clinical governance, right? No. Yes, clinical governance. Probably this means the way to rule a clinic or a hospital, something of the sort. But this, you would agree, but this is rather primitive. This is rather primitive. This understanding of this way of language acquisition would leave you at a very, very top of the iceberg, where the knowledge would be very, very superficial. Okay, what next? You go yet to another dictionary and you try to find you try to find the definition that will be more ample, full, complete. So corporate governance, something that I found in the list of those expressions that I gave you earlier. So corporate governance is the way in which a company is managed by the people who are working at the highest level in it. What sort of information do you gain from this definition? Just have a look at that. Is there anything actually special? Anything that will help you to understand the essence of that word, how it is used in business actually, not superficially.
Governance is about top level.
Top level, that's right. That's right. So the word top level here is important. And so I make a note for myself. Finally, after 2 or 3 attempts, looking into one dictionary and then it's another dictionary and the third dictionary, I find something worth remembering. Governance is the way to manage something, but normally at the top level. Okay. Then I read the examples that are given here. So there can be good governance, poor governance, corporate governance, then the example, effective corporate governance will contribute decisively to a company's success. What do you notice for yourself here, for your future use? You find, for example, that the governance can be effective. As a result, you may think that probably there will be some other words that will be similar to that. Good, poor. Any ideas what else? How else can you describe governance in terms of its effectiveness? Good, poor, effective. Any other words that come to your mind? Responsible governance. What else? Efficient. And here immediately you start thinking what the difference is between effective and efficient. Do you have any? And when you have this idea in mind, what do you begin doing? You immediately dive into dictionaries again, trying to understand that effective is probably something that is related to producing a good effect. That's effective. While efficient is something that is done within a short period of time. Something that is completed within a short period of time. Do you see the difference between effective and efficient? Right? So there can be effective corporate governance. What the effect would be? The effects would be probably their satisfaction of the shareholders with you. And what would be the efficient governance? The efficient corporate governance, from your point of view, what would that be? So effective, something that results in shareholders enjoying the way you rule the company. What about efficient corporate governance? Probably understanding that the company is profitable. The company is profitable, and the information circulates in this company so efficiently that all processes are very well timed and managed and ruled. As a result, the company is actually yielding a lot of profits. All right. So the examples that are given here will give you a better vision of how this word is being used and what sort of contexts it could be used in. Let's have a look at the second example. Again, probably now I might ask you to comment on this. So prior to my appointment as corporate governance officer, I worked on the strategy for our biggest acquisition deal ever. Imagine this is the sentence that is produced by somebody during the job interview. So somebody comes to you and you say, "Well, can you tell me what you were doing before?" And you say, "Well, prior to my appointment, or to my possible appointment in your company as corporate governance officer, I worked on the strategy for our biggest acquisition deal ever." What sort of information do you gain from this sentence? In terms of relying on what you gained from the dictionaries before, when you read such a sentence. Is there anything that you can actually get from here on the basis of the definition that is given here?
Governance is provided by someone, particularly by officer.
Are you not a little bit bewildered and puzzled by the expression corporate governance officer? Do you understand what this position is? Who is a corporate governance officer? Any idea about what sort of activity this person would be undertaking in a company? I would simply think that person is lying to me. Just lying to me because he is trying to make an impression, and he is just choosing a nice sounding expression, something like, "What were you doing earlier?" "Well, I was working as a corporate governance officer." Okay, this sounds very impressive. Oh, very impressive. Corporate governance officer. That's very impressive. What does it mean? Any idea about what it could possibly mean? CEO, possibly, yes, CEO, or somebody who is in charge in the company in providing communication between the CEO, the board of directors, the shareholders, the executive, saying, "Did you work as a secretary for CEO?" Yes, I'm sorry, yes. That's exactly what I was doing. What were your responsibilities? Well, actually, I was handling correspondence between different departments. I was simply just carrying letters from one department to another. Why do you call yourself a corporate governance officer? Well, after all, I was providing transparency and helping the company deal with information. Possible. Therefore, you say, I would be very much displeased with this expression, corporate governance officer, and then ask myself a question: can I understand the expression corporate governance officer just on the basis of regular English dictionaries? It doesn't give me any idea at all about, well, no idea at all about what it could possibly mean. All right, let's, so you understand. So that is the approach that is called LSP, language for specific purposes. You get the, you gain the knowledge of how this word is used generally in English. What are the possible phrases and prepositions and grammatical constructions where that word is used? But not more than that. You do not go beyond that. And in fact, you can use it only superficially. So you will not be, this knowledge will not give you an opportunity actually to concoct, to create such a beautiful phrase as a corporate governance officer. A person should be very clever in order to be able to make such a phrase as a corporate governance officer trying to hide his very modest position in the company. Just one more word. Okay, let's take the word value, for example. We discussed the word value. So the definition that I find in the dictionary, in ordinary English dictionary, English dictionary, is the amount of money that something is worth. And then comes the price or cost of something. Can you imagine how misleading this definition is after what we've been discussing earlier? So value is defined by the dictionary as the amount of money that something is worth, and then, as a continuation to that, goes the price or cost of something. I think they've mixed everything. Price and cost and value and worth, all four words, are just put into one. I said the economist wouldn't be able to understand it at all. He said it's complete chaos. I cannot understand it at all. From your point of view, does this definition give any idea to the person who is unfamiliar with economics or unfamiliar with business? Will he have any idea of what value is? Just on the basis of this definition. So, all right. Then I say, I do not quite. What do you think would be the concept that will appear in the person's mind when he reads this definition? Something, or the amount of money that something is worth, the price or cost of something, value. What would be the Russian word or term that might appear immediately after reading such a definition? Any idea? A layman, not a specialist. Цена, стоимость, ценность, какие-то деньги, которые кто-то кому-то отдает за что-то, это вот какая-то, скорее всего, это вот что такое. Так что такое value? Value, как это вот. И дальше начинается какая-то такая вот, что-то на пальцах, объяснение какое-то на пальцах. Value это вот, это price. Так price или value? Cost. Так cost или worth? Worth. В общем, все вместе. And then you say, it's clear. So when, if you come, for example, to the general director of a translation company, and he would start testing a translator, whether he or she understands anything in economics, saying, what's the value? The value is the amount of money that something is worth, price or cost of something. That person will never be employed. Never, ever, because he or she confused everything. All right, still, it's unclear, and after that, I would probably read definition number 2 or 3 in order to get a little bit better vision of what it possibly means. So definition number 2, something that can be bought for a low or fair price. That's interesting. Really. So value is something that can be bought for a low or fair price. Really, I can't imagine what the Russian word would be for that. Any suggestions what it could possibly mean? So that's the dictionary definition. Something that can be bought, not sold, but bought.
Bargain.
Huh?
Bargain.
Bargain. And what's that in Russian? What sort of concept appears in your mind? Something that can be bought for a low or fair price. That's value. That's value. So therefore, I make a conclusion in my mind. If I come to a shop, for example, let's say well, keeping this definition in mind, I will come up to the shop assistant. I want to buy a computer, for example. I say, excuse me, what is the value of this computer? So what do you mean by value? Do you mean price? No, I'm interested in value. What exactly do you mean, guy? So what I meant was low or fair price. So isn't it odd? So where did you take that definition? Well, the dictionary. Open the dictionary, you can find it. That value means something that can be bought. Well, I'm buyer. Something that can be bought for a low or fair price. So very, very misleading. Very misleading, in fact. And in fact, when you read it, it gives you only very, very superficial vision, very superficial idea what the word actually means. And even now that if I ask you about this meaning of the word value, I'm sure you have no concept of that in your mind. Something that can be bought for a low or fair value. Не могу себе представить. Что за русское слово такое? Разумная цена? Да. Приемлемая цена, да. Probably in that case, imagine you would marry somebody later on, yeah, right? And when you give instructions to your husband, and you will say, go to a shop and buy a new vacuum cleaner, but please think of the value. So they think of the value. So what do you mean, darling? I mean, buy it at a low or fair price. It's only very special, not special, right? So it will not give you any special vision or any special idea as the economists or mathematicians or people in business would understand the word value. It's just only very superficial. In that case, if for example you ask a translator, what sort of dictionary do you use? You say, I'm using the, what is it? Merriam-Webster dictionary. Would you be impressed? I will not be impressed at all. I think that dictionary is very misleading. Throw it away, actually, because it gives you a very misleading definition. All right, what shall I do next in order to understand it? Yes, number 3, by the way. Usefulness or importance. That's interesting. And it marks this definition as number 3. So, according to the authors of this dictionary, the first meaning is price, worth, cost, values, everything together. The second meaning is low or fair price, and the third meaning is usefulness or importance. Honestly, I can't make head or tail of all this stuff. I can't imagine anyone actually learning a word from just on the basis of that. After that, because I didn't understand anything, and I got only very, very superficial meaning of this word, I go and collect examples and have a look at the examples. Do the examples give you any idea of how it is used? Okay. The company's stock continues to decline in value. So that's interesting. So this doesn't go together well with the definitions that you provided. You give me this example, but this example doesn't match at all the definition that is given in the dictionary. So the company's stock continues to decline in value. Decline in importance, decline in necessity, decline in price or cost or worth, decline in what? You can't understand at all. So you will have more questions than answers actually when you study the language like that. Or number 2, for example, real estate prices have doubled in value over the last decade. Real estate prices have doubled in value over the last decade. Any idea what it could possibly mean? Real estate prices have doubled in value. Are there economists who can explain to me the meaning of this? The meaning of this? For me, it's rubbish. Actually, I don't understand what it means. Real estate prices have doubled in value. Price is a price, right? It's a price. So real estate prices have doubled in value. Again, you have lots of questions. So if you learn the language, the English language, at the level of LSP, of language for specific purposes, meaning just the way it is used in this or that document, grammatically, what sort of prepositions and phrases it is used in, and if you stop at that, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to speak efficiently. You wouldn't. Therefore, if, for example, lessons of English or classes of English that you might have where you would be studying business English on the basis of just definitions like that, you are not learning anything. The volume of your studies is zero. If you study like that, even though you may spend hours and hours investigating the dictionaries, the dictionary definitions, examples, and so on and so forth, and yet the volume and the stock of your knowledge would be zero. You just spend it for nothing. Have you been doing all this stuff all these years? Or were you doing something else in learning English, I mean? Were you also just finding the translation, and that's that? Or what sort of activity you were involved in when you were studying the English language for your business purposes, or for the purposes of understanding your special texts? Something similar, probably. Then comes a different approach. It's called CBI. CBI is content-based instruction. Content-based instruction. I was very much surprised what it means when many years ago, I think more than 15 years ago, I was invited to go to the United States of America and see how the English language is being taught as a second language in American universities and schools. And I discovered that they were using CBI most of the time. CBI, let me explain. So I went to the so-called Spartan School of Aeronautics. The Spartan School of Aeronautics. And I found that the class was full of Arabs at that time. The class was full of Arabs, and there was one American instructor standing in front of them. And, well, none of them spoke English quite very well, and the instructor didn't look to me as a technician or as a military person, nothing of the sort. He had a beard, he had a plate behind, something that looked quite strange. And so I was invited to be present at the lesson, and I found the following. They were standing in front of the blackboard, and there was the picture of the engine. What's engine? Yes, of the jet plane engine. Right. And from time to time, the instructor would invite this or that Arab and ask him to explain to him this or that detail and how this engine actually worked. If Arab number one, Arab number two, Arab number three would come up and explain to him the essence of how it works. And the person was just honestly and in good earnest. He was trying to understand how this engine actually worked. And when this or that Arab student was making a mistake, he just corrected this grammatical mistake. He corrected this grammatical mistake. And when he corrected this grammatical mistake, he said, write it down. And he was writing it down. Then after that, he said, thank you, now I understand this part of the engine, sit down, and now you just, he was asking some other student, Ahmed, and so on and so forth, come and speak, and the class continued. When the lesson was over, I came up to this American instructor and saying, well, that was very impressive. You are probably an engineer. He said, no, I'm not an engineer, I'm a linguist. I said, that's very interesting. You are a linguist teaching future pilots to speak English as a second language. And he said, this method is very efficient. Interesting. From your point of view, what's so efficient about that? What's so efficient about this method? Because Spartan School of Aeronautics in the United States of America was preparing actually good pilots actually to be able to fly Boeings and military aircraft. It was quite efficient. It was efficient because actually people were speaking about something they knew and were using all of their language that they knew in order to explain what was required of them and to explain how this or that just detail or element of the engine worked. But the English was not acceptable. Therefore, just the teacher's task was only to explain to them how to use grammar correctly and to correct mistakes. But everything else was turning around the speciality. So therefore, in order to add this CBI method to the learning of English, I add some more elements, some fragments from encyclopedia, from special manuals and guides and videos And I put on the screen, in order to understand it, first, the dictionary definition of value, the one that I was reading to you earlier, the examples that we were reading earlier, but also the definition from, let's say, INVESTOPEDIA. So value, or the enterprise value, for short, or EV for short, is a measure of a company's total value, often used as a more comprehensive alternative to equity market capitalization. So this already is something that makes sense to me. Meaning at least I know that I need to understand the word value through the word capitalization, and then I start on. Even though I do not quite understand it, I decide, and I would recommend you to do the same, I switch on some special video which will run, and I would simultaneously, while watching this video, study the definitions of the dictionary and the examples, just comparing everything as it goes.
Enterprise value is a measure used to value a company. It is usually used as a more comprehensive alternative to market capitalization. The enterprise value of a business can be calculated by taking the market capitalization.
So you just listen to it and at the same time read the definitions. You actually you dart your glance from here, from left to right to top to down, and you just snatch different bits and pieces of this, trying to make head or tail of what the person is actually saying in this video, giving you the general idea of this stuff.
Adding the total debt, including long and short-term debt, and subtracting all cash and cash equivalents. The result shows how much money would be needed to buy the whole company. Albert's Flooring wants to buy Ed's Carpets. Ed's is currently trading at $10 per share and has 100,000 shares outstanding. To buy all of the shares, Albert's would have to pay $1 million, the market capitalization of Ed's Carpets. But that's not all there is to it. If Albert's Flooring purchases Ed's Carpets, Albert's also has to take on Ed's debts. This increases the total price of the purchase. Cash and cash equivalents have the opposite effect. If Ed's has extra cash, Albert's can take all of the available cash and use it to pay down debts. This effectively reduces the price Albert's has to pay for Ed's Carpets. So if Ed's Carpets has $1 million in debt and $500,000 in cash, the enterprise value would be the market cap, $1 million, plus $1 million in total debt, minus $500,000 in cash, equaling $1.5 million. This is the enterprise value that Albert's Flooring would consider before buying Ed's Carpets. Investors often use enterprise value because it provides a clearer picture of the real value of a company as opposed to simply considering the market capitalization. Enterprise value is also an important component in many ratios that investors can use to compare companies.
Now, do you see the difference now between the definition of the value as found in the dictionary, just in the dictionary, and when watching and reading in encyclopedia and listening to this video, even though you do not understand it, but you finally have a vision of that word, what this word actually means. And this is what you see now on the screen is a typical CBI screen. It's a typical CBI screen. So you have on your table a definition from the normal English dictionary, a definition from encyclopedia, some video and examples. So by studying this, you can actually get a better vision of this. I wonder, after all this stuff, would you be able to understand a small fragment of real speech where the word value is being used? Just 30 seconds. But it will have the word value, and I would wonder whether you would understand what the person is talking about. Listen.
If you don't believe in value investing, what do you believe in? I mean, what are you looking for if you're not looking for value? And Graham laid out the philosophies so well, so simply, so powerfully, that what I learned at 19 or 20 from him, I've applied it ever since.
Okay. But he was speaking only and exclusively about value. Nothing else was said. Just a very brief and clear replica of value. I can play it again for you.
If you don't believe in value investing, what do you believe in? I mean, what are you looking for if you're not looking for value? And Graham laid out the philosophies so well, so simply, so powerfully.
I would probably stop here and say, who? Did he mention someone? Did you catch the name? He actually mentioned the name. He said Graham. Oh, you say Graham. Let me try and write it. Okay, probably something of this sort, something of this kind. All right, I will probably go to the internet and do you know who this person is? Yes, this is Warren Buffett. So you say, Warren Buffett. He speaks about Graham. You actually Google it a little bit, and you discover that actually he thought that Graham was sort of his teacher. Graham wrote a book that is called The Intelligent Investor, and he gained all information about business and initially at the initial stage from Benjamin Graham, The Intelligent Investor. So okay, let's go. Let's begin again, and let us see
what I learned at 19 or 20 from him. I've applied it ever since.
Okay, just a bit of information is clear. But let's listen again. I would want, because actually you know what value is. We spent already 2 or 3 lessons actually discussing value. And now I give you 30 seconds of real speech. Well, ideally, you should be able to understand what he's talking about. Ideally, because we've been discussing it. And you've been reading a lot of material about that. And you are making presentations about it. Now try to understand it. 30 seconds, just 30 seconds. It's not 1 hour. It's 30 seconds.
If you don't believe in value investing, what do you believe in? I mean, what are you looking for if you're not looking for value? And Graham laid out the philosophies so well, so simply, so powerfully, that what I learned at 19 or 20 from him, I've applied it ever since.
Okay. No idea.
Yes, I see.
So he just said that
He applied this term and this concept value in whole activities.
yes, he just said he speaks that value is over important for everything that he is doing, and that the idea of value that he got when he was 18 or 19, when he was 19 or 20, actually remained the same until today. And you say, probably he's speaking about the value of the company, and probably he's speaking, you can make a conclusion, about, как бы вы назвали инвестирование, которое основано на вашем понимании стоимости компании. Стоимости в том значении, как мы с вами обсуждали. Useful. It's called value investing. Value investing or value investment. You say, he's talking about value investing. He's talking about value investing. He's explaining how people should be what people should be thinking about when making decisions about investment. All right. Actually, I was planning to show to you a little bit more of the CBI screens, something related to the word governance. Let's have a look at this.
All publicly traded companies have the same basic corporate structure. Let's look at Ed's Carpets. Ed's name is on the building, but his company is owned by shareholders. Ed holds stock in the company, so he is one of the shareholders. If all the shareholders try to manage the company, nothing gets done. Instead, they hire a management team to run the company for them. This team includes a chief executive officer, CEO, a chief operations officer, COO, and a chief finance officer, CFO. Underneath these 3, there are managers and employees who make sure the carpets are being made and delivered every day. The management team can't report to every shareholder, so a company board of directors is created. Directors are elected to the board by the shareholders. A board is usually made up of a mix of shareholders and management. The board helps direct the company's management and protects the shareholders' investment in the company.
Any idea what corporate governance is? You have it on the screen. You had this video. You had this thing explained. You had my previous lecture. If I ask you now, for example, what is the essence of corporate governance? Can you give me 1 word or 2 words related? So now I'm asking you the question on the basis of the CBI approach, not on the basis of the LSP approach. I may ask you the question about LSP approach. What is corporate governance? So corporate governance is probably the way you govern corporations. That's the LSP approach, right? Corporate governance is the way you govern or rule or manage corporations. You have no idea what corporations are and why it is called corporate and why it's corporate governance. But then when I ask you the question about just on the basis of the CBI approach, you should be able just to look at the definitions here, the definition there, at the examples in different places. And finally, you would be, after listening to this video, you would probably be capable of telling me what corporate governance is and giving me probably a word or two that will just sum up and give me the gist of the idea of corporate governance as you understand it. Any ideas? Just a word. Relationship, one word, okay. Structure, relationship. Structure of what?
Structure of the company.
Structure of the company, you think so? But it's governance. Now switch on your LSP approach, right?
Structure of management.
Structure of management, that's better. That's better than the company. Structure of management, relationship between whom and whom? Yes, that's right. What else? What other words you may just come up to your mind when you actually investigate it, when you study it like that? If you say structure of management, relationship actually will give you, can actually cause you to think of so many other words. And that's important. That's really important. That while thinking about a certain notion or a certain business notion, you might actually be developing other notions and ideas in your mind related to that. Relationships or relation. What other ideas could be found in your head?
Relationship. Oneness.
Management. Other ideas? If you try to think logically, just develop that word. You say management of the company, effective management of the company, ruling, building the relationship between the management and executives and board of directors and shareholders. Responsibilities, interests. There's balance of interests, right? But if you ask yourself a question, how to do it, what would be the object to which you actually apply your knowledge of that? What would that be? Because communication is a very good word, communication. So you think of communication. So your relationship actually immediately translates into the word communication, because you need to establish an easy flow of information from one part of the company to another part of the company, from shareholders, executives, boards of directors, and so this easy flow of information would provide the necessary vision for you of how the company operates. Any other words that are related to the word communication? Because if you say, well, I'm going now to work on making the communication efficient in this company, how are you going to do that? Any other ideas that come up to your mind with relation to that word? Transparency, right. You say, I want this to be absolutely transparent. I want this to be absolutely transparent. So what is transparency? So this means that wherever you're doing something, you immediately report to me, why are you doing that? For what purpose? What are the consequences? Do you take any risks? And so on and so forth. If you say transparency of what? Transparency of what?
Activities.
Operations of making decisions.
I think information. That's what you need. Meaning, this decisions, yes, meaning this is already part of the management process, right? But information is just, you at least need to know verbatim, in words, what actually the company's management is intending to do. So, transparency. And you remember last time we were drawing the hierarchy of the corporate governance, where at the top was the shareholder, under the shareholder was the board of directors, and under the board of directors was the CEO, and under CEO were the executives, and under that was staff. If you think logically about that, what do you think is necessary? Do you think that there are methods and approaches to providing transparent communication between all these layers in the business? You would need to use the same method, the same approach. And the information should look generally the same. Or do you think they should be different? Well, from my point of view, they should be different. Because who is a shareholder? A shareholder is not necessarily a specialist. A shareholder may be an old granny who's working in the school next door. She could be a shareholder. By the way, if you think of Gazprom shareholders today, most of the time they will be pensioners and some old people. Are you going to speak to them about the very complicated terms that you use in financial statements and reporting and so on and so forth in terms of law? No. You would be using a different language. Then, what sort of language do you think is used between the CEO and the shareholders? Will he try to look and sound very special and providing lots of technicalities, lots of logical conclusions and so on and so forth? No. No. They would be trying to actually adapt this information to the audience that if they do not understand you, what do? They sell their shares. They do not trust you. They do not believe you. They sell it. They no longer invest in you. Therefore, you say, well, that's dangerous. If I say something wrong today, using the wrong language, tomorrow my shareholders may leave me. And they will simply sell their shares. And as a result, their market capitalization will fall. Just because of the fragment of information. All right. What do you think? And the language between, let's say, board of directors and the CEO and the board of directors and the executives, do you think it should be different, the language of these layers? Is the language the same, or are they using the same terms and terminology and the same logic or conclusions? You are all going to work later on, well, sooner or later in some companies, and you are going to speak to your bosses, and the boss is going to speak to you, and probably you will have a boss over boss, and they will be speaking probably in different languages. So every time you'll be trying to adapt yourself to a different mode of understanding, manner of understanding. And let's say if an ordinary person, an ordinary employee, is invited to speak at the board of directors, do you think he will speak as the CEO? No. So it means that in order to provide transparency, you need every time to think, who is your audience? To whom you are actually doing that? Who is going to read you? Therefore, when you're writing business plans, it's one thing. When you're writing information memoranda for the investors, it's another thing. When you're writing, when you're developing annual reports for the market in general, is going to be something else. And there is also there may be a certain idea about how we can deliver the information about your company to the top management of the country, to the leadership of the country. So I know there is a magazine in Russia that is called VIP Premier, and I was told. I had one publication there in this magazine. You can find it, by the way, in the internet. Somebody told me that there are only 2 readers of this magazine. I said, really? 2 readers? You said, yes, only 2 readers. Who do you think are the readers of the magazine that has a staff, actually? They prepare the articles. They have correspondence. The people just go around asking interviews. And only 2 readers. VIP Premier. So who? The President and the Prime Minister. so just 2 readers. So imagine the whole company is actually working for just 2 readers. Isn't it important? Because it's the way the companies are thinking of communicating their strategy and their approaches and their policy to the leadership of the country. So this actually boils down to three ways of communication. There is B2B, business speaking to business, B2C, business speaking to customers, and B2G, business speaking to government. And in all different layers, different language is going to be used. Now I'm going to show you a video. And this video was specially developed for the shareholders in Europe of one of the leading banks of Russia. One of the leading banks of Russia, bank, they developed this video in order to inform their shareholders in one of the European countries. Of what? So just watch this video and then tell me what you think about what sort of idea they wanted to communicate to their shareholders. And consider the language that they're using, okay? Just see whether it is technical or not technical and what sort of information message they were trying to deliver. I was writing the script for this video myself. This is my text. Now the question is, from your point of view, what sort of message the bank was trying to communicate to its European shareholders? It was shown in Europe.
The internet banking is the future.
The internet banking, that's your idea. Okay, any other ideas about what sort of message they wanted to communicate using this language and this actually visual representation of their idea? Sort of people. Remember in the beginning there was Y2K. Y2K. There was this mentioning of the new generation coming. Right? What's that?
Sort of people that will face in the nearest future.
In the near future, right. It's year 2000. It's year 2000. Year 2000. actually the beginning of a new era. The bank just wanted to say, we no longer concentrate on our usual and ordinary clients. We focus on new clients. And new clients, our new customers, are not in real life. Our new customers are in Facebook, in Instagram, in the web, on the web. So actually, in the web, right. So actually they wanted to say that it's going to be very efficient and very effective. They were trying to prove with this video that, that the economy of dealing with the customers in the web, in the internet, is very efficient and promising. So the bank thought that by showing this video, they would gain the approval of the shareholders, and so they did. And so they did. As a result, by the way, the next step after this video, you will be surprised. The next step after this video was, you may think of what the banks might be thinking of as the next step after they determined their new customers. After they determined their new customers, you start thinking of competition, right? Is it not right? Competition. You start thinking who might be fighting for the same customers and for the same clients. All right, let us think of some kind of make some genuine conclusions about what sort of competitors a bank may find in the web, in the internet for themselves, rendering financial services, deposits, loans, using money, using cash. What? Competitor to the bank.
Crowd platforms.
Yes, crowd platforms. Anything else? Amazon, Google, PayPal, Web Money, Yandex Money, Kiwi, all this stuff. These are not banks. These are not banks. But these are the companies that are operating huge cash flows. Huge cash flows. It's interesting that because of this policy that is going to be quite new, but in fact revolutionary, banks no longer compete with each other, but a bank may compete with Google. A bank may compete with Amazon. A bank may compete with Kiwi or with PayPal. All sorts of companies that are actually operating money one way or another. Even with MTS, even with insurance companies. And insurance companies, like, for example, you know, some of the insurance companies in Moscow have already started creating and developing their own banks. You heard probably of Rosgostrock Bank, right? It's a bank that appeared. So this is the message. So one of the most efficient ways, actually, to deliver the new information to your customers, be it business, be it ordinary customers, or be it government, of course, is video. And if you attend any of the conferences organized by big companies and corporations in Russia, you will notice that probably they spend huge amount of money actually developing corporate videos, business communication video platforms, explaining what they mean through very simple, easy to understand images. Actually, let's have a look at this stuff.
They say a picture, is worth 1,000 words. I think a video is probably worth 10,000 words.
Video is fast becoming the most ubiquitous tool for companies to use in their communications mix.
Video is becoming more and more prevalent. My younger daughter is using it all of the time. Her sort of generation is using it all the time. We need to start engaging with that.
It's the only thing that can combine a company's ethos, capture their personality, their characteristics, and actually humanize their business.
You've seen a huge explosion in the use of video online as well, and it's moved away from being something that was seen as a business to consumer output to something which is really important from a business to business perspective.
Video is a very good way for somebody to be able to really give a window onto their world, showcase who those people are who bring that company to life. And from a marketing perspective, it's obviously important for companies to be showcasing themselves as modern and forward-thinking.
People are really time poor in this day and age. They don't have an opportunity to read a lot of text, and a video is a really effective means of getting across which could be quite complex messages in a really simple and engaging manner.
It enables us to combine in sound and imagery in a way that traditionally we've never been able to kind of do before. And more importantly, it allows us to tell great stories.
Do you think that actually speaking through video format is efficient way of communicating ideas inside a company, in the corporate governance structure, at all levels? Do you think the video is a good format, let's say, for the CEO to speak to its board of directors, or for the for example, imagine some of the executives or an accountant is asked by the CEO to prepare a report, a financial report, and then he sits down and makes a video for the CEO, hoping to entertain the CEO. Actually, the choice of the right channel of communication is a very important thing. And very often, if you choose the wrong channel of communication, there may be tragedies. I read one of the reports of the results of the investigation why shuttle collapsed in the United States of America. And one of the conclusions was that they have chosen the wrong way to communicate technical ideas. They said many of the materials were presented not in the form of Microsoft Word format and ordinary narrative text, but in the form of PowerPoint presentations. And PowerPoint presentations very often would lose part of the technical details. As a result, when actually at the last stage, at the construction stage, at the assemblage stage, there were certain mistakes made in the manufacturing of the shuttle that was sent to the space, and so there was a tragedy. So once you make a mistake in communicating very clearly the details or technical details, giving them either fully, completely, or giving them only partially, may cause a lot of mistakes. It's likewise when I'm speaking to you, for example, at this moment. I'm not going into technical details. Imagine, for example, if I spoke to you within the framework of this course, within the LSP approach, saying, well, today we're going to study, 15 phrases, and then I will probably give you dictionary definitions, examples, and so on and so forth, asking you to provide translation and so on and so forth. The results will be one. But I chose CBI. By the way, I don't know. Let us vote. What would you prefer? LSP explanation of business vocabulary to you, or CBI? Let us vote for LSP. Okay, let's vote for CBI. So okay, that's what you prefer, right? So I chose this communication, this way of communication to speak to you, because I understand that you are not linguists, you are not philologists. You understand economics and macroeconomics and finance much better than I do. But I chose to speak, I dared to speak to the specialist, being a non-specialist, hoping that at least you will pick up some useful phrases when speaking about that, and everything that is incorrect you will quickly correct in your mind. But otherwise, but generally speaking, you will understand the essence of this, and this will be much more interesting for you.